Okay, so we finished the previous video and we flashed like a new device. We saw like the Yocto animation. Everything good, everything is great. Now, since it did not have my WPA supplicant credentials, then on the device itself, like I took a keyboard, I have a screen, everything's fine, and I created a passphrase with like WPA passphrase. It would go something like this: WPS passphrase your SID, and then you could also put here like your pass into etc sorry, I call it WPA pass. And in the previous video I showed you how I put a service, but what could go and just do WA supplicant dash p dash I wn0 dash c. The configuration file would be like etc WPA pass. I'm not doing it now, okay? And then it's on the background, it doesn't really matter. And then we can do udhcpc wlan dash I wlan0, and everything checks out. Now it gives you the IP that it binds to, because there are like the HTTP hooks. I talked about it. I don't know even when, like in very old meetups, maybe like 5 years ago, or the addendums of the meetup. And this is the IP that I got. So this got cleaned out of our Yocto project build. There is no RDP port, there is no VNC port, there is no nothing port over there, okay? But there is SSH and RPC bind for the reasons that we saw, because we saw the dropper and the RPC bind services on the target. So let's go ahead and connect to it. SSH root. I didn't do anything to the image, as opposed to like in the previous time, where I repackaged it, like with the rootfs, I mounted it, and then I changed whatever I want to change, and then synced it. So the IP was 192, whatever. And I'm going to, interesting IP, and I'm going to SSH it, and it just works, okay? The reason it works is because of the dev tweaks, like in the Yocto project. It just allows to use root for like a login, and the dropper SSH supports it. So far, so good. Now, I just want to make sure my screen is indeed shared. Yeah, it is. Yeah. So we don't have Weston. We don't have everything in Weston. Now, what's going on? What was the default configuration file that we got in Weston? Now, so it's under etc weston.ini, and what we see here are a lot of comment outs, okay? And we see actually no client resize. It's not supposed to be working anymore, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's an old option, but configuration files, sometimes they just like exist. So this is the configuration file that we have. We have xwayland, true, a DRM backend, which is good. And the modules, the shell, we don't have like a screen share set here. However, there should be screen share section somewhere. There it is. And what we have here is a command, user bin weston, backend RDP backend.so, shell, full screen shell, so, and so on and so forth. Basically, instead of running Weston, I could be running this, and then I would get like the screen share for whatever module I'm trying to share, which in this particular one is the RDP backend.so. Now, if I don't build RDP or VNC into my device, I will not even see this file. But if I do, it's a small root test. We can just be very, very like naive about it. We can do like find /name RDP backend.so. Our device went into sleep mode. I just pressed it on the device. Let's see if it got compiled in. Oh, yes, it did. But of course it did, because we enabled it in the configuration. And I will show the configuration of the Weston as well. So if we look at the different modules there, we also see that we have our VNC backend, okay? So we could select either or, okay? I should have like reset the terminal before and like on my host. Didn't do it, doesn't matter. So basically for screen sharing, there is a trick. If you have like a keyboard on your device, what you can go ahead and do is ctrl+alt+s, if I'm not mistaken. So let me just go ahead and do exactly that. And let me also, I think, look at the default Weston log, okay, which is this one. So I did ctrl+alt+s, but there was nothing interesting in it. And there is a reason for that, because I really didn't use the keyboard now. Let's see if my keyboard works. Keyboard works. Ctrl+alt+s. Absolutely nothing. Okay, so this is not very encouraging. So why isn't it working? What's going on? What would happen if I just try to go ahead and just copy paste this exact file? So let's figure it out. Now, there is something important about the display variables. I'm not sharing like the other screen now because that's what I'm trying to show you how to enable. I can see it with my eyes, you cannot. When we deal with Weston, we need to have XDG and runtime dir pointing to whatever Weston knows, okay? And when we want to use like display, we also want to have export like to Wayland display, something like Wayland display equals Wayland 0 or Wayland 1. In this particular case, I will tell you exactly which one it is because I have a keyboard here. So yeah, sorry, it got stuck. My bad. So the display there would be Wayland -1, okay? So if I export this and put like the XDG runtime dir to the user that is currently running it, which is, sorry, I'm typing but you cannot see it, run user is 1000, which 1000 here is Weston, okay? We can see that there is like a socket here, okay? So the socket that we have here essentially can be used by different clients to connect to the server. It also enables me, if I want to run Weston inside of Weston, but this is something that I will not do, okay? So what we have here is this screen share, but nobody does anything with it. We do not yet set up any of the Weston display. We don't need a no client resize, but I'll just copy paste it anyway. And I want to go ahead and make it work. And it will say, hey, XDG runtime dir is not set, but I already told you what you need to do with it. So let me do it. I'll export XDG runtime dir equals run user 1000. So let's now, I didn't set the Wayland display. I'll do this one again, and look what it tells me. It tells me now, hey, using config file xdg weston.ini, which is nice because it has an error, but the error doesn't matter. It is very nice. Why? Because it means that it actually is trying to do something. It's actually going to work. So what's missing here? What's going on? Before we answer this, I did it in another video. I don't know if I published it yet or not. Let's go ahead and do also export Wayland display equals Wayland 1, which is something that is already in use. Okay, it's important. And then we'll do the same thing. And now, again, it's saying, hey, loading the module, RDP compositor requires, yada, 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 yada. So the error here actually tells us that we need either to create an RDP4 key, which is known like as the legacy one, or have an RDP TLS cert. Something very important, because in the next video or in one of the subsequent videos, I will actually show how to create like the certificate. And the idea here is that we need to create a certificate somehow, for example, OpenSSL, put it in the target. So it's already several steps. So if we do like Yocto, like we need to do, we're going to create recipe and going to take care of everything. But I'm just going to do it manually on the host and then put the files, okay? Because I already know how to repackage it. But the important thing here is that there is a public key infrastructure that can provide security, but we want to do some development stuff, and we don't really need anything in the client. We're just going to trust the server, not care about anything, and that's it. Okay. So later I will show how things work, and I still did not touch the Weston display at all. Okay. Very important. And since we already mentioned like the Weston display, then basically if everything is okay and set, then we should be able to do something like run Weston flower or anything. And I actually see the flower on my screen. You will not see it now because I don't really want to go ahead and you know what? I will try and do it. And the flower disappeared because I pressed something on the screen. But I'm going to do it again. I'll get rid of it and I'll put the Weston flower. I see the flower and maybe you will see it too. Yeah, so in this little image, we can see it because I put Weston flower like from the command line. And the logs that you see here or don't really see is actually the contents of what's its face of the WPA supplicant being very gentle, so I don't accidentally reboot the device because the power connector is a little bit sensitive there. So we are getting somewhere, okay? I mean, things work, it's nice, it's good. One more thing. You can run Weston inside Weston, essentially. Like if you go ahead and do Weston, like then it will go, it will work like if you open it, like on your computer or so on. I think I have Weston here. So this is Weston, okay? This is like my computer. And you're supposed to be seeing it, and then like if you do Weston, then it will still work, okay? So if I do here Wayland display, this is Wayland 2, okay? And this would be Wayland 1. And on my computer, it will likely be Wayland 0, okay? So basically, we can open a compositor inside a compositor and so on and so forth. It will not always work on your embedded systems or on your targets, okay? So you usually don't want to do it, but just know that it will not always work. So right now it says, hey, it's not happy about it, okay? It refuses to do so. I mean, I have like the Wayland display set properly, and it refuses to do so. And we can see that like the entire initialization of it, it's like pretty nice and it's not bad at all, okay? And here it's unable to lock the log file, run user, blah, blah, blah. Maybe another compositor is running it and so on. So this did not work, and this is why it did not, I will not see like the other Weston in it, okay? If I go now and run Weston on the device itself, it will do the same thing, okay? So on the Yocto project that we built from scratch, this kind of tricks do not work. Why do I even bother to mention it? Because if we want to start debugging Weston and not run it from a service, and by the way, right now I'm in user root. I'm not in the user Weston, okay? So I'm going to do like kill all Weston. Then if I want to start like Weston, I need to first of all take care of like the configuration variable and so on, like I did. And now when I run it, it automatically works and like we are happy. Okay, so just important to notice that. Okay, I'll run it in the background and that's essentially fine. So in my computer, and if we set it up properly, and it really doesn't matter for our discussion, we can go ahead and run Weston inside Weston. Otherwise, we don't. But if we run Weston for the first time, we can do it, which enables you to go ahead and learn how to run other kinds of screen shares and or modules. This is how it's called. Now, the command that we did before was with backend RDP. Now, if I go ahead and do the backend VNC, and what we usually run is what we usually run is the DRM backend, okay? So it also tells us that, where was it? That the VNC backend requires a key and certificate for TLS security. It reminds a lot of the error message for the RDP. So generating these certificates can be useful for either one of those. We can generate the RDP legacy certificate as well. It's a little bit simpler, but if we generate a TLS certificate, we can win for both. Why do I put like these quotes? Because I will explain the next video why. I need to give a spoiler though. Don't use RDP if you can use VNC. So that's it for now. And just like a reminder, the only change I did like in the rootfs itself was putting like being able to connect via SSH. And this is something I'm not going to give up. Now, as opposed to what I did before in the repackaging, in the next video, I will just copy the files and then we already know how to repackage. If we are able to just copy, we don't need to flash all the time. So it's nice and it's good. And this is the end of this video. I actually think it's been very informative about it. Probably went a little bit longer than I wanted it to. So next video will be solving those certificate issues, and this is what we're going to do next.